Back down at Jeremy and Megan's beautiful garden in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the Bristol Briar, as they have named it, and it's got some amazing, really interesting plants in it. So we come back here frequently because what Jeremy's done is created a lot of different types of spaces. So we can come down here and do videos on, lots of different types of wet areas and dry areas.
Oh, yeah.
He's created different places so that he can try all kinds of plants. And so in this particular video, we're going to do up to 10 or maybe even a couple more plants that you can just kind of plant and forget. Really kind of low maintenance, summer, heat tolerant.
Yeah, summer. I mean, it's a...
Right.
Some plants, they do great despite the heat, and other plants, they do great because of it.
Right.
And so most of these plants that we're going to be talking about, not all, but most, they really need that heat to kick into that hot cycle that they have.
Right.
So we'll kick it off with this really cool plant. This is Ficus palmata icebox, which doesn't feel like an icebox today.
Yeah.
It's a fig. It dies back to the ground in the winter. But by the time May comes around, it's poking up out of the ground, extremely drought tolerant, and thrives in the heat. So if it's in the 90s and humid every day, or if it's in the 90s and a little bit dry, it's going to love it. It needs heat. It likes water, but it doesn't seem to really need it.
Right.
And so this has been a great plant. Again, it dies back to the ground, but this will triple in size by the time October rolls around.
Yeah, these leaves are just gigantic.
Yeah,
on it.
It gives you that deep, dark green in full sun, rugose, so it has that rough look to it, but it's still kind of shiny.
Right.
Yeah, it makes sound, right?
Yeah, right, yeah.
It has fuzzy stems. They actually feel really good.
Yeah.
It just, you can't go wrong. Clay, sand, good drainage, bad drainage, it does not matter.
Right.
It is a fig. It doesn't need a lot of water. It's happy where it is.
Nice. So in this one, a lot of the plants that are going to be on the list are quite a bit more cold hardy than a lot of the plants I include on the channel a lot of times. But this one is not as much. This one's like 7B.
7B, and even in 7B, it will die back to the ground.
Right. Okay, gotcha. And probably up to zone 10.
Yeah. I don't think it needs to get cold. I don't think it needs any winter at all. So.
Gotcha. Well, it's a beautiful plant, and it's so interesting. I don't think if you came into this garden, you would walk past this plant, you would want to know what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to get some attention. You've got another one beside it.
Yeah. So I like those when you can put coarse textures with fine textures, and you can really run the gambit. This is just coming into flower. This is Vernonia Southern Cross.
Right.
And I guess it must be a hybrid of Southern genetics or something, or I don't know, but just coming into flower. And there's a lot of these Vernonias that are just absolutely great for, really zone 4 to zone 9. They're going to be happy.
Right.
Of course, they do die back, but this it's loading up to feed the pollinators. It is, I believe it's a hybrid, but it's all native genetics.
Right.
Native to North America, but it stays pretty compact. It will do better with some water, but it is periodically drought tolerant. If it gets dry for a little while, that's fine.
And it's up on a mound.
It is, yeah. This is,
it's not even. It's
a sand berm, and it's fighting it out with this plant for any water that's here. This is not an irrigated spot,
gotcha.
So this does get pretty dry.
Right, and they're very different textured plants. And that thing's come out of the ground, made it to this height, and now it's full of buds. It's going to be blooming for a while.
And that is worth noting, back to the icebox, that, like I said, this dies to the ground. So here we are mid-July, and this first emerged in April at all. And now that it's hot, it grows about 2 inches a day.
Right.
And it'll just keep on going.
Wow, I love how complex the flowers are on Vernonia.
Oh, yes.
They're just really wildly complex. Pollinators go bonkers.
Pollinators also appreciate how complex the flowers are.
Right, and a lot of the things, this is one of those that's important because this is a mid to late summer one.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's another thing. There gets to be quite a few things that really do look great once you hit August and September. You get that kind of second wave. But here we are in mid-July. It's been hot now for a couple of weeks, and in many gardens, there's kind of a doldrum. Those dog days of summer start to really come in this time of year. But
Yeah.
there are options for that. There's a lot of great choices for the garden, the 7B garden, but a lot of great choices even for the Zone 4 and 5 garden, which we'll talk about today. Another plant that I really, honestly, I've just let it go crazy in the Bristol Briar is Lilium formosanum. And I know Plant Delight sells this as giant form. That's where the original plants came from. I have hundreds of these now in the Bristol Briar. Everything in front of me right here, these are all seedlings. They seed around. It's an incredibly vigorous, non-running lily that it can flower. If it's happy, it'll flower its first year from seed, and usually much later than the second or third year, 3-year-old plants will bloom. But it's easy to edit. So if you don't like where one comes up, just pull it up. It comes right out. But these will bloom starting in early August to mid-August, and they'll have several of these giant, I mean, they'll be this big, huge 7-8 inch white lily flowers.
And we can see some of the buds forming on them up there.
Yeah, the buds are just starting to show themselves. And I like, there is some diversity in having hundreds of them. You can kind of see where things settle out genetically. So some of these do only get about 4 or 5 feet tall.
Yeah.
Some there's a couple over there that are well over 7 feet tall now.
Right.
I've also found that there's a big difference in the number of flowers per stem. And I have only allowed the ones with more flowers to seed now for several years. And it seems like, this is just my opinion, but it seems like that trait may be something that's easily selected from seed.
Right. They look, I mean, they're like soldiers out here.
They really
and
are.
then they bloom after everything else is given up.
They bloom,
Right.
and it just,
Right.
they just glow after dark. So it's an amazing plant for a night garden as well.
Right, gotcha.
Those giant flowers. And again, they can grow anywhere in the garden. Some plants, you have to put them in the front of the border. Some plants you got to put them in the back of the border because they're tall.
Yeah.
These can go anywhere because they don't really shade much out.
Yeah, right.
And again, if you don't like one, if one is inconveniently placed, you just pull it out and it's gone.
You have this wild Taxodium screen that you've been working on for a long time. A lot of conifers grow spring and fall.
Yeah, they put candles out, right?
Right, yeah. This is putting on its full growth right here in the middle of summer. Like,
that's right.
Throw the heat at it.
It really does. It leaves out with other, this of course is deciduous, Taxodium, bald cypress, goes bald in the winter. Mm-hmm. It doesn't see, it's like a lot of plants are spring loaded where spring hits and they explode. This is summer loaded. And I think it's similar with metasequoia as well, the dawn redwoods. This has actually grown about 10 or 11 inches into it this year. But it really turns on the afterburners in June and July. And it will continue growing quickly as long as it has water until September, October, when the days get pretty short.
Right.
And
you've done something pretty unique with these.
This is different. The late Noel Weston gave me this idea. Mm-hmm. Great nurseryman. He also he gave me all these plants. They were in 1-quart pots. Tap-rooted into the ground, so I had to dig them all up.
He has a daylily farm in Garner, North Carolina, and was well known in our business.
Yeah, he was a great man, and so he said, well, why don't you put the bald cypress really close together and just take the branches off every year, which you can do with bald. It's a form of horticultural torture, I guess.
Yeah, right.
But bald cypress, and this is a special clone. This is Peve Minaret, and but what I've done is some years I've taken all branches off. I've simply telephone poled them. Other years I'll take them most of the way back. I'll take them back 80-90%.
Right.
And which allows them to get a little bigger, a little faster. These are on 1-foot centers, which you wouldn't think of doing with a bald cypress tree.
Yeah, right.
And so there's a couple directions that this could go. Either I'll end up getting my act together and grafting the lateral branches into each other and making a living picket fence out of it.
Right.
or I'll just be lazy and let the trunks get so big that they finally hit each other.
Just heal together.
And I'll get a living piece of plywood. But either way, I'm happy with it. Right. And it's just such a delightful feel. The sun rises behind them every morning, so I get this wonderful shadow coming out across the
So you're
lawn.
not giving these any additional water, really?
I do have irrigation on these.
Oh, okay, okay.
But really, once they're established, they don't need them.
Right, I got you. It's not like you're out here doing your water analysis, going the
No,
Taxodium. You're right.
They tap down. Bald cypress are one of those native plants that they can grow in the water all the time, as most people know historically. You get the bald cypress knees.
Yeah.
But they can also grow in the driest part of your garden. And they don't really seem to care. It doesn't seem to slow them down or speed them up one way or the other. Yes, there's some irrigation here, but it's more for some of these other plants that are growing in between.
Right, the cannas would definitely appreciate it.
Cannas like it. I've got some boxwood that are coming up.
Yeah.
One of my favorite ones that also is very narrow. And, you know, I've got Cercis down there further, some redbud that could definitely use water.
Right. Well,
But
nice.
it definitely turns on the afterburners when it gets hot, and it's a great plant to see that new growth all summer long, that fresh look every day.
Yeah, and they look fantastic. And they're soft to the touch.
They are.
Super soft to the touch.
Yep. Another one of my favorite plants in the Bristol briar. I think this was originally, it was first named as a solidago, as a goldenrod, but that has it has now been split into its own genus. This is Bigelowia, Bigelowia nuttall. This is a native, I think, eastern United States plant. But can take it very, very dry. This is not irrigated. It's really skinny and it's very much raised. So even though we've had rain within a week, this is getting dry. There's still moisture in here, but this is getting dry and it can take it dry. It never really opens up like you'd expect a goldenrod to, but this will get a little bit more yellow here in the next 2 weeks before August. Of course, our native pollinators very much appreciate that. It doesn't run. It is evergreen in the winter, and you get this, you get a little rosette of very fine textured foliage. So it looks like kind of like a cool season grass tuft in the winter. It will seed around some, and it's welcome to seed around some. I'm going to jump over here real quick. There's a little crack in this rock. I didn't put this here. This Bigelowia seeded into this tiny, tiny crevice, and it's rooted into the rock, and it will flower. It is not irrigated. I don't know how it's doing that, actually. It's one of those things. I've gardened a long time, but when I see things that I can't understand, I can't explain, it just makes it that much better. So Bigelowia nuttall, and maybe you're further north and you're wondering if you can grow this plant. I think this is hardy to zone 5A or 5B at least. I don't know if it would be evergreen there, but awesome plant. Just a great plant for gardens, for pollinators, for people who don't want to do that much all the time in their gardens, and for people who do, like me. Another really cool plant here next to it, another native of Texas. This is Hymenoxys scaposa. This is named Travis. It blooms all summer. It does not stop flowering. So this started flowering in April or May, and it will continue to do so until there's ice on the ground. I believe it's somewhat evergreen. Again, native to Texas. Zone 5 hardy, so you can take this one way north if you want. And it doesn't need water. It can take normal garden soil just fine, but it doesn't need it.
It's amazing how many of those Texas natives are actually way cold hardy. They
Right?
just got moved down there. The ice moved them down.
They got pushed.
They got pushed.
Yeah. Now they had to figure out how to take the heat.
Yeah, right.
And so
right.
They do. This looks great all summer long.
Yeah, nice. One more back here.
Yeah, I'm just standing in so many great summer plants. I could go on and on, but just a real quick shout out for Clematis Sapphire Indigo, which is it's pretty common on the market now. It's probably a zone 5 or 6 hardy. I don't know exactly for sure on this one, but this continues to bloom all summer. It does not care if it's really, really hot either. It just keeps going.
Right. That one doesn't seem to care if it climbs either. It actually will
Well,
trail.
it doesn't climb, and so I've continued learning how to use this plant. So what I found, the best way I have found so far to use this plant is actually on the top of a 3 or 4 foot wall, because it does not climb it. It doesn't want to go up either. It'll just fall. And so if you have that 3 or 4 foot fall for it, you'll just have a flower wall all summer. And it could be a south-facing wall. Really any direction is fine, as long as it gets pretty much full sun.
At mid-July with a clematis blooming that much is...
Exactly.
Yeah. This is an interesting one. We won't count it on the list because it may be harder for people to get, but it is an incredible plant.
Baptisia arachnifera. You just, I mean, come on, you've got silver fuzzy leaves, you've got these beautiful, almost greenish yellow flowers. Blooms right now, here we are mid-July, and this is when it blooms. Most Baptisia bloom in the spring. This one blooms in the middle of summer when it's really hot. And native to coastal plain Georgia, because it's federally endangered, it cannot be shipped across state lines. It can be purchased and driven across state lines by the person who bought it, but we can't ship it, unfortunately. Plant Delights Nursery, Juniper Level Botanic Gardens can't ship this plant. So unfortunately, I mean, we certainly believe that if we could propagate this thing, which we can, but if we could also ship it, then it would become less
rare.
Less rare,
right.
Yeah. But that's, that's good intentions. That is the law, and certainly that's followed. But if you're ever in Raleigh, you can buy this plant at Juniper Level Botanic Garden and drive it on back to wherever you are, anywhere in the country. Zone 5 or 6 to probably 9B. So it's has a big range. So many gardens across this country can really benefit from this native plant.
Yeah, and the thing about this plant is every one I've ever seen looks just like this one. It's a perfect round ornamental plant. It's like literally the perfect ornamental plant.
And it's one of those plants, that I always say, this is unimproved. So in nature, when it has full sun, this is the way that it looks. You can't script it any better than that. A lot of gardeners know about Jack in the Pulpit, which is there's the native, we've got many native Jack in the Pulpits here in the southeast United States, primarily Arisaema triphyllum, which most people have heard of. This one is not native to the United States, but it's very late to come up. And so this comes up usually in June. This is Arisaema consanguineum, which is just a really cool Jack in the Pulpit. This one doesn't even have a flower on it this year, and I don't care. Look at these beautiful silver centers, the whirl of leaves, and it gives you that fresh look. So it's a bulb, right? Bulb-ish. I don't know if that's the proper term for the structure in this case, but it's essentially an underground storage structure that you think of daffodils and tulips as wonderful spring flowers. Well, here's something that comes up from a bulb in the middle of summer. And so that gives you that nice fresh look, nice new foliage. I just love the way this looks in the garden. It has little drip tips on it, which are these extensions. Not all of them have that. This is something variable. Some have much longer drip tips. Some have shorter ones. Sometimes Arisaema consanguineum does not have a silver center, but it's not uncommon to find one with a silver center. Most of the plants we've talked about so far are sun plants. This one likes a little bit more shade, but summer happens in the shade also. And so here we are in the shade. It can stretch out and get a little bit of low angle sun, but it's very, very happy here with some irrigation.
We're back out in the full sun, and this one is up on a raised mound. So this one clearly is one that can take the heat.
It does great in the heat. This is Hypericum Hypearl Compact Red. And I believe this was originally bred with the florist industry in mind, because these little fruits here, these are not flower buds, these are fruits. And so they have a great vase life, perfect for cut flowers. And these are actually the flowers here. You're kind of quite a ways away from them, but we can get...
Yeah, but it's a typical Hypericum flower.
Yeah.
It's got the, I mean, you can ID it as a Hypericum from that and not much else.
I like the leaves too. So the leaves I don't know if it's an overlay or an underlay of purple in them.
Yeah.
So it comes across as a darker green.
Right.
So in the full sun garden, you know, you might have your silvers and your yellows and your purples, but to me, this comes across as a darker green than you can really naturally have.
Right. The yellow flowers show off on it, and the red seed pods show off on it.
This is a plant that benefits from cutting back to the ground every couple of years, I've found. I've let it get, I've seen what they do when they get bigger, and like a lot of shrubs, they'll start to get a little tired, but it's very easy to just cut it back to a few inches tall and let it do its magic.
Guys, it's beautiful, and it's right here in the middle of summer.
Yeah.
It is like peak.
Yeah.
The flowers were one phase, and now the
fruits. Yeah, because it was beautiful in flower, and you had you know, fresh tip growth and the beautiful green purple leaves with the flowers on the end. Yeah, they fade, but it doesn't skip a beat. There's no off season in the summer.
And bees go nuts on all Hypericum. They go weird. I mean, they get weird in those little filaments and just, you know. So I put up a video a week or so ago as you're watching this on my favorite flowering plant for July. And I picked between dahlias and zinnias. I'm just going through my phone and going through what did I take the most photos of in the last 5 years during the month of July. And I went with dahlias, but zinnias are certainly worthy of July, being picked for July for sure, and the summer heat. You're letting yours self-seed.
You know, we've had these now, it's like a double flowered, I guess you'd call that a salmon pink.
Yeah.
But Megan and I planted these 6 years ago now. Actually that way up against 5 years ago, up against a driftwood fence. And they've crossed the road now, and they're welcome. They're growing here with tomatoes. Yeah, they're fighting with them a little bit, but if we don't like that, we'll just pull them up.
Yeah.
These also feed American goldfinches.
Yeah,
they
big time.
really like these. So they got their little landing pads. You can see they've been a little heavy-footed on some of these, but so yeah, these seed around every year. We don't have to do anything to them. They're incredibly drought tolerant.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't need water, especially if they're in a heavy soil. So yeah, I can't say enough good things about this plant. I'm amazed at how tall these are getting. These are actually going to end up being 5 feet tall by the end of summer.
Yeah.
And I think it's because they're kind of fighting it out with each other. Just a great effect.
It is, and you have the bees on them all day, and you have the goldfinches coming and just ripping the seeds out of them. It's amazing you end up with enough seeds though, it's reseeding itself.
Every year. Yeah, that's the cool thing about goldfinches. It's one of those creatures that can share in the bounty of the garden, but they never really take too much.
Yeah.
They always leave plenty behind if your goal is seeding.
Right, yeah.
I guess if your goal is seed control, then they're failing at their job.
Right, yeah, exactly.
This is a great plant to break into or transition into something like a vegetable garden, where it's difficult to have a landscape and a veggie garden. This can do both, and that's what it's doing now.
Yeah, and it's drawing pollinators into your vegetable garden
absolutely.
too, which is helping, helping balance out. Making sure that everything's getting pollinated. Your soil's very different than mine.
It's sandy for the most part. Some areas I have irrigation. I don't irrigate this too much here, but I will water the tomatoes, of course.
Right, and they're benefiting from it somewhat. Okay, well, beautiful. Thanks, Jeremy.
You.